Hi, everyone. Good evening. Today is Wednesday, January 13th, and we meet once again as the City Charter Review Commission. So thank you, everyone who is joining us virtually and all the members who are here present in person. Today, we will be discussing Section 7 and 8 based on our agenda, but we will also carry on with Section 6. So the first item that we will be discussing is the last item on Section 6, which was a proposal presented by Roy Avellaneda, and it was a proposal that many of you had questions about, and our city solicitor needed time to do a bit more research on. We hope that today we will be able to answer some of your questions that you may have directly for our city solicitor, but also directly to the proposal of this, of the author of this proposal. So let's begin first with attendance. Judith Garcia present. Leo Robinson. Calvin Brown.
Here.
Melinda Vega Maldonado.
Here.
Todd Taylor.
Here.
Rosemary Carlisle. Rosemary, I see, is absent. Yesenia Alfaro.
Here.
Henry Wilson. Absent. Alice Barkerset. Mary Burke.
Here.
Jason Stalker.
I'm here till like about 6:30.
Thank you, Jason. Charlene McLean.
Here.
Mimi Rekentor.
Here.
Excellent. Everyone present, 2 absent. We move on to our public speaking portion. I know there are 2 members. We have 1 in person, 1 joining us virtually who would like to speak, members of the public. I will allow Manuel Teche, who is in person, to approach the mic and address the commission.
Hello. So my name is Manuel Teche. I'm a Chelsea High alumni. And I am here today in support of the recommendation that I made a couple of months ago. The recommendation that Section 7.5 be amended to add that the city allow non-citizens to vote in municipal elections by changing the language in Section 7.5. The only reason why I'm asking your support on this recommendation is a simple one. I am asking for the voices of the people that have not been heard to be heard. We usually talk about fighting for the people that are not being listened to, and we always see that on social media and we share it, but whenever we do have the opportunity to do something, we change that, we usually stand by, but all of us here now, or at least the voting members, do have an opportunity to start changing that, to start amending that. I am not asking you to let members of outside communities to vote. I am not asking you to let outsiders vote. I am asking you to let the man that lives across the street, the women that live across the street, the women that wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and go to work, they pay their taxes. Because if you did not know, people who are here undocumented do pay taxes. And they provide this city with the amount of money that it has right now, and it contributes greatly. And the kids, the children, they go to our schools. We have a Bridge Academy. We made that academy just for kids that were coming into the United States. Recently, newcomers, and they're getting the education, but guess what? We're not allowing their parents to vote because what's the reason? They were not born in this country. But we're really past that now. We're at the time in which we can say there are people who need representation. If you need numbers about what's the percentage of people that live in the city that are undocumented and that they are not being allowed to vote, you would be surprised to find that a great portion of them are not being represented by city elections. Again, I am not asking you to let outsiders vote. I'm asking you to let people who work at Dunkin' Donuts, the ones that they help you day to day, and they help day to day for this city so that it can run as smoothly as it has been doing, and even despite the pandemic. Because I've seen Chelsea, even though it had high rates of COVID-19 infections, it's still standing. And it's still going strong on doing daily COVID-19 tests in order to help the community. And I am asking you for your help to allow the people that are being unheard to be heard for once. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. Now, any other members of the public who wish to speak? Any other member? Okay. So now we move on to discuss an item that had remained in our minds, which was something that we did not finish discussing, which was the proposal by Roy Avellaneda, Section 6.4. As you may all remember, I will read it very, just the beginning portion, make Section 6.4 Personnel Administration the Zoning Board of Appeals section, and create Section 6.5 as Personal Administration. The new Section 6.4 Zoning Board of Appeals should read as follows. And as you may all have in front of you, there is a Zoning Board of Appeal document that he presented to us. I'm sure that you've had plenty of time to familiarize yourself with it. So I will open up the floor for any member of this commission who has questions, either for Roy Avellaneda or for our city solicitor. I see one hand going up, and Charlene, you have the floor.
Cheryl, are there any other municipalities in Massachusetts that have such a definition that allows the city council to approve or reject decisions by the zoning board of appeals?
Cheryl, you're on mute.
No, there are not, and they're definitely not. So what you have to understand is that some cities and towns are the special permit granting authority. In fact, they are the ZBA, right? So that's different than what is presented to you here. What is presented to you here is a city council reviewing a special permit granting authority's decision, which is in violation of state law. Not only is it in violation of state law to have someone then review it, the timelines in this overextend the state law timelines to appeal any decision of the special permit granting authority. So as written, this particular document is in violation of state law and illegal and can't be adopted. However, what I think the city councilor was trying to propose in a roundabout way is that the city council then becomes basically the ZBA. So what I heard last week or 2 weeks ago was to deal with mitigation measures and so forth and so on. I would, that purpose alone is illegal, but you can be the ZBA or the special permit granting authority as the elected officials. But Chelsea's charter does not call for that right now. It calls for the ZBA to be appointed by local residents. So the city council can't review the special permit granting authority's decision, and especially give more time to approve it after state law gives someone 14 days to appeal it. You don't get another 15 days afterwards for the city council to reject or approve it. It's against the law.
Yes, Charlene, continue.
Cheryl, thank you for that answer. So Roy, given that, how would you propose amending it then? I mean, because on the face of this, this is an automatic denial. So to achieve what you want to, I'm interested in how you would amend this proposal.
Roy, feel free to answer, and then I see Councilor Todd Taylor. Roy, you're on mute. Roy, we can't hear you. Can you try one more time? We can't hear you.
Or you're still on mute.
No, we can't
Cannot
hear
hear you at all.
you. We still
Nope.
can't hear you.
I'm not.
There you go.
There you go.
Does that work?
Better. Can you talk so we can hear you? No, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Nothing yet? Anything?
Yes. Perfect. Now we got it.
Now?
Yes.
All right, finally. Sorry for the technical. I should have walked in the room then. Yes. Okay. There are quickly 3 communities that I know that the city council plays a role, or a group plays a role in adopting a special permit, and more importantly, as I wanted to address mitigation. Houston, the city council adopts or approves the special permit. Our neighbors, Revere, do the same. After someone applies to, at the same time, concurrently to the application of a special permit to the ZBA, it also applies to the city council, and it goes both at the same time. So there were cases that allow this with the ZBA and a city council in place. The city of Boston actually has a separate committee altogether that has to approve the mitigation package. I don't know exactly how this has to happen, but I know it can be done. It should be done. And my reason is this. I've spent nearly 20 years on the city council. And not once have I ever been invited by any city manager, past and present, to discuss any mitigation that they negotiate with developers prior to this going to the zoning board and prior to him standing in and saying, here we go. This current city manager is the first to actually make a recommendation to zoning boards. Our previous city manager did not. Our previous city manager just made deals. And I know I see Cheryl laughing, but I know for a fact, mitigation was extracted from developers. Mitigation was given. I know a fact that funds were given to nonprofits outside, and not once was it done publicly or without the explicit approval of the city council. None of it. So I'm talking about a process that has no public input whatsoever. If the city of Boston can have this mitigation process done publicly, I see no reason why the city council shouldn't also be the ones to do the same. And it's that simple. Boston knew it there. And that's a quick look at what goes on. Now, I understand I've said it's up to the city council to go up and discuss with the city manager. But I can tell you, I bet you there are members right now in the city council that not once have been approached by the city manager to discuss mitigation. It is not. And as long as that continues, that is not a fair, open, and transparent process. And that needs to be done. Deals cannot be and should not be done out in the closed courts. Not when their community benefits are decided. That's what I'm saying. The way we have it right now is that the zoning board is not in any position to negotiate mitigation. That's not their role. They look at the variances and the conditions of why it should deserve a special permit. They do not negotiate, nor can they. That's not their role. And I think at the final end of the day, when city councilors are the ones to hear it the most about special permits being denied, they should be, at the end of the day, deciding yes or no. Because we already do that with the traffic board. The traffic board already hears, positions, makes decisions whether or not to change direction of street or apply any sort of parking restrictions. And then ultimately, that has to be approved by the city council. Now, there's an argument that, well, if this is done, the zoning board may not feel like they're relevant. Well, then, if that's the case, how should the planning board do? Because right now, that's their role. And all they do is recommend to the zoning board. So it's the same thing if the zoning board does its due diligence and sends it to the city council for final approval, however which way it should happen. That's what should be. And there's right now a lack of transparency, there's a lack of access and openness when it comes to mitigation packages. And if one wants to talk about how a city council can go and advocate, I have personally heard when asking for certain things, that's not my priority. Well, then I don't know how to make the priority of my residents a priority for the mitigation package that is being negotiated. So, as a longtime city councilor, I want to know this time when we're reviewing a city charter in 5, 10, 18 years from now, whoever the new councilor comes in doesn't have to know how to play the game.
Laurie, it's very difficult to hear you. So may I just interject here? Because that was a little bit, Judith isn't paying attention, but everybody, the charter gives the authority to mitigate to the city manager, which you did not change, one. Cities and towns, the city councilors can do all different kinds of things. So there are ways to do this. First of all 11 of them mitigating is the most ridiculous thing, but it would not be out in the open either. Whatever the city manager gets for mitigation is a public record. So that's not fair to say that it's not transparent. Whatever, and there's staff. So the Traffic and Parking Commission is a creature of Chelsea. And it's staff on there, okay? Staff knows what the city councilors want if the city councilors speak. Every city councilor could call for a subcommittee to meet with the city manager as to a pending special permit and say, this is what I want. You don't do that. Okay, so there are other ways around this that to give power off to 11 people to discuss with developers, oh, well, I want this here and I want that there. That's not fair. And to say we don't get mitigation, I've been here 17 years. We've heard from city councilors. Do we agree with one particular councilor, whatever he wants something? Probably not. But we heard from them. We hear from district councilors all the time when there's going to be a big development. John DePriest is who you go to represent the city. He's a city administration. That's how we mitigate. Mitigation is long before they even come in and pull the special permit. That's the way you run a city. What happens in other cities and towns is that the politics get in place and money gets passed around. And different cities and towns require different things. There is no reason why we can't be creative. I didn't hear an option or an amendment tonight from Councilor Avellaneda, and I sent all this to him. No other city and town has a traffic commission the way we have it. We grant a lot of authority to our traffic commission because usually you have a parking clerk. But I just want to say is that legally, what is before you tonight is illegal. But yes, you can make your city council the special permit granting authority. That's an option if you're willing to do that. But they have to hear every special permit and every variance.
Thank you, Cheryl.
That's what I want to say to you. That is an option. That is what Newton does. That is what Revere does. That I think Everett has a crazy system too.
Thank you, Cheryl. I want to give City Councilor Todd Taylor an opportunity. City Councilor Todd Taylor.
Can everybody mute, because I'm getting a lot of feedback on if you're not speaking, mute, because I really couldn't hear a lot of what was going on. I'm still getting feedback.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. The IT team is working on it on the back end to try to identify where the echo is coming from. So please, keep us informed if you keep hearing it, but we can hear you clearly.
Okay.
So feel free.
Good enough. So this is, Roy, I think, raises legitimate points in his basic kind of view of the city manager having a lot of power to do this. Now, I mentioned this when we were talking about the city manager's role in the charter, and, everybody said, oh, well, it's worked so well so far, why change anything? This is kind of what I'm saying, and I agree with Cheryl in the fact that I think that the form of government would need to change in order to make this happen, to where you have a strong city council, where the city council does take over the responsibilities of the ZBA. Now, I'm not opposed to doing that, but in doing that, I think it would not behoove the city to have 11 city councilors on the city council. And if you're going to take on that much responsibility, I think less city councilors and more pay for the city councilors, because there's a lot more work, would be in order. So that's a whole nother kettle of fish. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I think that it oftentimes would make things more efficient, but then you lose the citizen participation, which I am all in favor of. So there's obviously pros and cons in this, but I don't think you could go forward with this as Roy presented it. I think his reasoning behind it, though, is sound, and I think that this commission and also the city council should look at these issues, to try to resolve these problems. I think it's right. I think that the city council doesn't have enough say in what happens in a lot of things in the city, which it should. I'd still like to see the citizen participation, because I think that's vital too. But we have kind of a lopsided system because of the corruption that went on previously, so that we have a strong city manager who basically has all the power in the city. Now Cheryl says, well, there's ways around that. Yeah, there is. But it might be a lot more efficient. I know, because I was on the planning board, and every single thing has to come, because the way the government's set up, every single thing has to come before the planning board to get a special permit, because nobody can comply with the ordinances because they were written 100 years ago and no one's willing to change them. So it's a really inefficient system. And I think Roy is right to want to reform that. I just don't think this is the way. I think you have to make a decision to whether you want a weak city council, or if you want a stronger city council and taking some of that power away from both the commissions and the city manager. I don't really want to take power away from the commissions, but the city manager, I think, has way too much power in our city of government. That's always been my stance. And I would ask those of you who were against what I was saying before to please reconsider. This is not any type of power play or whatever. It's a philosophical balance of power. And in Chelsea, there's not much balance of power, because basically all the power rests with the city manager. And I think we really need to reconsider how this works, because we're not in the same situation we were 20 some years ago. And I think that in some respects, we need to move on from that and start to deal with things a little bit more efficiently. And we kind of have a cockamamie system now I agree it was needed at one time, but I think reconsideration of these things, at least to consider them, is very reasonable.
Thank you,
That's
Councilor
it.
Taylor. Any other members who wish to comment or have any questions? Anyone else? Councilor Robinson.
I think as a body, we have a responsibility, and if the city manager is going to be negotiating things, nothing stops us from being able to go in and have a conversation with him about what we want or what we're looking for to see what's going to be beneficial to the city. I mean, if we're looking to change the makeup of the zoning board, we'd have to change some things in the charter in order for this to be able to work and take place. And, you know, along the way, we're going to sacrifice people who participate on boards that could affect the rest of the boards that we appoint people to. And I think we have an opportunity when the city manager presents people to be on boards that we usually move them to a second reading so that we'd have an opportunity to sit down or make phone calls to these people and talk to them to see if we think that they're appropriate to be on these boards. And I think that's, you know, part of our obligation as city councilors.
Thank you, Councilor Robinson. Anyone else? I see Mary Burke and then Roy. Mary. You're on mute. Perfect.
Yeah. So can we just go back to the original? So, Cheryl, are you saying at this point, we would not be able to actually vote on this because it is not written in a legal way?
The proposal that is presented, the proposal that is presented tonight is illegal.
Okay.
And it violates the plan. So what Todd was discussing was we have a Plan E form of government. We would really need to make some deep changes. And the proposal still would not pass based on the timelines and violating Chapter 48, but you would need to make some changes.
Mary, does that satisfy your question?
Can't hear you, Mary.
You're on mute. It's okay, it happens.
I just wanted some clarification as to what then is, you know, is expected of us, this committee tonight. And I do think, you know, there's always room for improvement, but I do disagree with many of the premises that Mr. Taylor did put forward. So, you know, I do think that we have many things that are working well.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Roy, Councilor Avellaneda, I know you had your hand up. You're on mute. We can't hear you.
How about now?
Yes.
All right. In light of the city solicitor's statement, I would ask that the proposal be withdrawn. This needs to be worked on. I plan to present something to the council and have something that fits our charter so that we can have some sort of codify within the zoning process or whatever we have in zoning ordinances, so that a mitigation process is in place. While my colleague, Councilor Robinson, states that an ability to walk into the city manager's office and to have one-on-ones with him and try to negotiate mitigation is available. However, in practice, I will tell you from experience, I'm sure if I point to some of their newbies, no one ever told them, hey, you have the ability to go into the city manager's office and mitigate and offer and request mitigation. That's never been explained to me. I had to learn that, and I found out much more my second term round than I did the first time. So what I'm trying to do is make sure that whether you are a first-year city councilor or a 20-year city councilor, there is a process put in place that everyone city councilor can get involved in when it comes to mitigation and input on special permits that get approved. And that without that process in place, it shouldn't get approved. And it shouldn't be it's a who knows what type of deal, which is what we have right now. And I agree with Councilor Taylor. Look, we are not in the same place we were 20 years ago. We have matured. We have gone on. And our city council right now, the way it works, has been and can work on these deals. If other city councils and aldermen can somehow negotiate amongst themselves, the impacts of a development and figure out what can and doesn't pass, it will. If it's up to the city manager to have to make a case for what he negotiated in front of the city council and get 6 votes, then that's what should happen. Let him be the point person. But this idea that we have right now in present, that he can go out and maybe some council knows it, maybe they don't, and that he negotiates in a closed room, out of the public eye, mind you, that in itself is dangerous. I'd rather be out in the open and everyone know exactly what we're saying than have it done in closed doors. And I'm sorry, it's done in closed doors. And I have not seen the mitigation proposals passed. I know for a fact the new hotel at the end of Broadway had a mitigation process. There was nothing that got passed in front of the city council. Nothing. No one came to the city council and said, hey, by the way, we're going to give X amount of dollars to a nonprofit. At what point, put it on the city council and tell me when that vote happened. Tell me when the residents of the city heard about that. Nowhere, not at a zoning board, certainly not at a planning board. So if I'm asking for transparency when this stuff happens, I think that's fair. And if I'm asking that the city council, every city council member be part of that process and not within closed doors and not because someone knows something and this is how the power levers work, then we will all be, as a city, we will all be better for it. And that's it. So I will withdraw this right now, but at some point I will be bringing this back up, and maybe it's part of a zoning ordinance that will be passed and not a charter change. But I guarantee you there is an appetite and a will on my colleagues to be part of the mitigation process in a formal public setting. And if the point person has to be the city manager, then fine. Let him be the one guy to negotiate, but let him have to come in to us. I recall the MOU that had with MassDOT. It was emailed to us. It wasn't in public. In his offer, and what he wanted to be signed, had the 5th Street ramp closed down. It had no snow fences. It wasn't until I publicly put that document out there. It wasn't even supposed to be a public document. It wasn't until I asked for that to be a public document and that began to go a public process and I raised holy hell that I, and along with the community, negotiated a much better deal. Even though I was told there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to stop 5th Street off ramp from closing. So do I think the public process should work? Absolutely. I think we as a better community deserve this. Absolutely. That's the goal here. I understand if maybe this format isn't the right one in the language, but at the end of the day, this idea of mitigation, it's done already in the city of Boston. Go on their website and you will see how they created a subcommittee made up of residents and of the area to negotiate that impact and mitigate it. It's got to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, so now that this motion has been withdrawn, we will no longer continue the debate on the matter. We will move on to the next section. This motion is no longer in front of us. There is no longer a vote in front of us, so we will move on to our next section. I see Councillor Brown. If this is regarding this section, please make the remarks brief. We're not going to be opening it back because it's been withdrawn. So Councillor Brown.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So my question is, what is the order here? I mean, Roy has taken up about 15 minutes on debate that after the motion was told that it was illegal. How are we running the meetings here? I'm just wondering why we have to sit here and listen to all this past actions on former city councils and former city managers when they have no relevance in what we're debating here tonight prior to putting this proposal on the agenda for a vote.
So
I just think it's out of order, and I think as we go forward, I think as we go forward, we ought to have some fairness and some standards here. I appreciate what he's done and said, but he had a week, and honestly, I thought we had 2 weeks to find out from ourselves to get response back from the legal department, which you stated last week, which haven't happened. Tonight we hear, and we have to hear all this here action, where if those two had a conversation that needed to be hashed out, could have been hashed out between them. I think it's unfair for us as members to have to listen to this and feel like that we're being underappreciated for what we're doing with our time.
Thank you, Councilor Brown, for your comment. I will address this quickly. This motion was brought. This packet was given to the city solicitor in our last meeting. The city solicitor made it very clear that she did not have the answers to some of the questions that these members had. So everyone asked a few questions. She didn't have some of these answers. She asked for time to do her research. We gave her time to do her research. She gave her verdict today that this is not legal. We opened the floor today to the members of this body so they could ask their questions. As the chair of this committee, it is my duty to ensure that every member who has a question gets the opportunity to ask the question. This item is no longer in front of us. Everyone was able to answer their question. I have asked multiple times if they were satisfied with the answers to their questions, and they were. So it is my duty to ensure if a member has a question that it is answered. It is my duty to ensure that we give our city solicitor the proper time that she needs to do her research. She did it. She gave her verdict. So that's the end of the story. We have this item withdrawn. I am speaking. I am speaking. You do not, you are out of order. I am speaking. I am speaking. Someone please, no. I am not out of order. I gave the opportunity for the city solicitor to do this. Again, the item, it is withdrawn. It is no longer here. Item is withdrawn. We're not discussing the matter. We move on to section 7. Section in front of us is section 7.1, which is a proposal introduced by Roy Avellaneda, and it reads as follows: that all local municipal elections, including special elections, be held on Saturdays. The primary election shall be held on a non-Labor Day weekend in September. The general election shall be on the first Saturday of November. So it should no longer be Tuesday. The proposal in front of us is asking for Saturday. Does anybody of this commission have any questions regarding the matter? Mary.
Just a question, in terms of voting by mail, are we going to continue that in Chelsea?
That is a question for our city solicitor.
Well, one, that has to be a question by the Commonwealth. The Secretary of State has to determine whether or not it's going to be allowed for moving forward.
So I know that they've intended, they verbally have said that they like it, they think that it's been successful. I guess my question is,
we don't know yet. We haven't been told.
Okay. So the change would go forward even if we are having vote by mail, right? That's to vote on.
So this Saturday change is just what day he wants the elections. But if we had vote by mail, you could still change the date you do your elections, I guess.
Okay.
Great. I see Henry Wilson. You have the floor.
My question is, can we have an explanation on why we want to have it changed to a Saturday versus a Tuesday?
I believe Councilor Avellaneda, when he initially brought this up, mentioned how people don't work on Saturdays and it would be easier for them to come to the polls.
Okay. Thank you.
I see Councilor Todd Taylor and Councilor Brown. Councilor Todd Taylor.
All right, two things. One is if what seems more than likely that voting by mail will be continued in the future kind of makes this a little obsolete. I would also remind people that there are religious groups that would have a hard time voting on Saturday. So I'm not sure that Saturday voting would be, the right thing to do on this. I really don't. So.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Brown. And after I see Charlene and Mimi, Councilor Brown.
Hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so the first part, voting by mail, I mean, if you want to vote by mail, it's not something that's going to be done by the state at this point. All cities and towns would have to have their delegation advocate for them for this, and also have your local bodies to support that. One of the things, and the most important thing of voting by mail, is funding. So unless the city going to be willing to pay for voting by mail, voting, whether it's the envelopes, the return envelopes, the clerk's work, that's something that has to be looked at. Also, another avenue that we should look at is also speaking to our city clerk and ask them what's their opinion about voting by mail. Would they like to see it happen? I mean, we're elected bodies, school committee members, city council. That's a discussion that we can have and we can bring it to our delegation. The switching to a Saturday election, some small towns switch to Saturday elections, obviously because they have a smaller community. A lot of the bigger towns do not switch to Saturday elections. Saturday elections is not as easy and it's not as convenient as people think they are. There's still a lot of work that has to go into Saturday elections, and also, as Councilor Taylor stated, there are also some religious holidays and days of worship also prevent folks. So trying to make something feasible for one generation is sometimes impede on another generation of folks. So as we go forth, we should keep that in mind also. And we also should have a conversation with the city clerk. Thank you.
We do have early voting. We do have early voting that has extended hours too, so.
Okay, I see Charlene and then Mimi. Charlene.
I was just going to piggyback on what Councilor Todd Taylor was saying, that in addition to Saturday voting being difficult for certain religious communities, we also need to consider the overtime costs associated with having the staffing for the different polling stations. I'm not opposed to Saturday voting. I think it's actually a very good idea. But I think there are so many questions and concerns that need to be resolved before it could be enacted here. And I don't think that we are right now equipped to make that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. Mimi. You're on mute.
I just want to, my concerns were the same as Charlene, so there's no point in reiterating. I'm more concerned about the cost. So, thank you.
Okay, great. Anyone else here who would like to make a comment? Anyone else joining us for Councilor Brown?
Thank you. I just want to respond to our attorney, Cheryl. The early voting this year is only extended to March 3rd, 2024. So any elections prior to that date, you have early voting. Outside of March 3rd, you do not have early voting because, again, the state have not authorized it or taken up the initiative. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else have any comments? Otherwise, we will take this to a vote. And again, remember, it's simply a recommendation that is to be added in the packet for the council presentation. So that being said, I see no one else making any comments or have any questions. I will bring up the tally sheet here for the vote. So a yes vote is you agree with the proposal in front of you. The proposal in front of you essentially says to change Tuesday's elections to Saturday elections. A yes vote is you agree with the proposal. A no vote is you do not support the recommendation in front of you. Judith Garcia, no. Leo Robinson. Calvin Brown. Please unmute yourself.
No. No.
Perfect, thank you. Melinda Vega Maldonado. Melinda Vega Maldonado. Okay, Todd Taylor.
No.
Rosemary Carlisle. Absent. Yesenia Alfaro.
No.
Henry Wilson.
No.
Alex Barcalcel.
No.
Mary Burke.
No.
Jason Stalker, he had to actually leave. He had a work commitment, so I'll mark as absent. Charlene McLean.
No.
Mimi Racantor.
No.
Okay. Majority of those present voted no, so recommendation is denied to absent. We move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the last item on our agenda. Introduced by Manuel Teche, Section 7.5, recommendation that the city allow non-citizens to vote in municipal elections by changing language in Section 7.5. So as you may see what's in front of you, the motion in front of us is to allow non-citizens to vote in municipal elections and only municipal elections by changing the language in 7.6, in 7.5. Do we have any comments, concerns from this body here? I see Councilor Todd Taylor.
Cheryl, can you please weigh in on this?
As of today, I'm not aware of any city or town that a non-resident is allowed to vote in. It's not in our constitution. However, our state constitution, pending before the legislature are home rule petitions in Cambridge, Somerville, maybe Amherst. I don't know of any that have been allowed, but a lot of cities and towns would like to allow residents who are non-citizens participation in their in voting. And it's similar to the initiatives of having children under the age of 18 vote for the school committee.
Okay.
So it would have to be a home rule petition and a special act to allow this.
So it would have to be a home rule petition. I see Councilor Brown who may have some input. Councilor Brown, would you like to add?
No, I'm all set. No.
Did you say you're also, okay, I see Mary Burke.
Just a point of clarification. So the home rule petition versus the charter. So it's a different pathway.
Well, it would be the same pathway for us right now because other cities and towns are not in charter change. But it's a change to our charter, and we would seek legislative approval, but sometimes a legislature would make you ask your other residents to vote on it. I know some of them went the home rule amendment seeking approval. I don't know of anyone who's actually had it approved by the state legislature.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from any of the members here?
And mind you, those home rule amendments went up in 2019, and this past year has been COVID, so I don't,
Okay, so essentially, and just to clarify, thank you, Mary, for that question. So just to clarify, even if this board does not vote in favor of it to include it in the packet of recommendations, it can still go through as a home rule petition? Sure.
I'm confused what your question is.
So if this recommendation is not accepted and it's not presented through this body, let's say this body votes no, can it still be presented as a home rule petition by another counselor, another body, another person?
So so there's different ways to change the charter. It would have to be a charter change, and under our charter, there's different ways, and under the Commonwealth's laws, the city council themselves could hold public hearings, bring it to a vote, ask a question. They could seek a home rule petition also as to this particular charter change. But this committee is just to review the charter and make a recommendation.
Okay, great, thank you. That answers my question. I see Councilor Todd Taylor. Did you have another comment question?
Actually, Cheryl just answered it.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Robinson.
Right, to the city solicitor, even if we send it up to the legislature, it would take, well, I know Somerville and them who've already had stuff up there that's been tied up for months. Even if we moved forward with a home rule petition, there's no guarantee, one, that it would pass, and number two, it would be kicked back and have the residents of this community weigh in on a vote as to whether or not it would move forward or be accepted. Would that be correct?
Sometimes the legislature would want the residents to vote before them, but that is correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions before we take this to a vote? Great. So this is the last item on our agenda. This is the last vote of the evening. A yes vote is you are in favor of, you support this recommendation as presented. A no is you're not in favor of this recommendation to be included in our packet. Start with Judith Garcia, yes. Leo Robinson?
I'm going to have to vote no on this.
Calvin Brown? You're on mute.
I'm voting no. Vote against it. No.
Melinda Vega Maldonado? Melinda Vega Maldonado. I will mark as absent. Todd Taylor?
No.
Rosemary Carlisle? Absent. Yesenia Alfaro?
Yes.
Henry Wilson?
No.
Alex Barcalcel?
No.
Mary Burke?
No.
Jason Stalker? He had to move, so absent. Charlene McLean?
No.
Miriam Rakentor?
No.
Okay, majority of those present voted no. Recommendation denied by majority of those present. And 2 absent, 2 in favor. All righty, everyone. That is the end of the items that we will be discussing today. So we covered the last pending items of Section 6. We covered Section 7 and 8. Our last meeting will not be next Wednesday. It will be the following Wednesday. We have, as you may all know and anticipate, there is an presidential inauguration taking place next Wednesday. I mean, I'm sure many of you do not want to miss that, if it at all happens, hoping it does. But nonetheless, have a great evening. I look forward to seeing all of you on, I believe it's the 27th of January, which is our last meeting. We will be discussing Section 9 and 10, and if there are any miscellaneous items that need to be discussed. Otherwise, have a great evening, everyone, and stay safe.